Well, for more on building those fortunes, I spoke with Dan Alexander. He's associate editor at Forbes. I asked him what stands out from the Chinese billionaires list.
Almost all of them are men. You have 13 females, but most of them are men. One thing that's unique about China is that almost all of them are actually self-made. Because of the government history in China, there hasn't been an opportunity for people to make these sorts of fortunes until recent years. So over 90% of them have actually forged their own fortunes.
And when you look at the industries that a lot of these people brought themselves up in, what are some of the key sectors?
Yeah, well, manufacturing, of course, as you might expect, is huge in China. But so is technology, so is real estate. If you look at the newcomers this year, most people might expect, hey, a bunch of tech guys who are joining the list. In fact, manufacturing is the highest category all over the world. About 20% of the new people this year are in manufacturing, and most of those people in manufacturing are coming from China. Trailing that, then, of course, as you might expect, you have technology and then some real estate folks as well.
Now, what about some of the trends that you're seeing in some of the billionaires who are now joining the list? Is there anything that you're seeing there?
Well, one thing that's crazy, particularly in China, is just the volatility of the markets. You have, in the last year, you had 70 new people join the list. So, that's more than one a week. But then you also had over 30 drop out of the list. And so, you can just see that people are minting and losing hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes within days or weeks.
Now, outside of the markets, China is also shifting to a slower, more sustainable growth. How is that affecting who's on the rich list?
Well, what we might start to see is, if that does indeed become a more consistent, measured growth, is we might start to see less of that volatility. You'll still see a lot of new people joining the list, of course, because although it's slowing growth, it's still growth. And the billion-dollar threshold, it doesn't matter if they're only there. You'll see more coming, but you might not see 70 in the next year. The country with the most billionaires might come from somewhere else, even though China has dominated that for the last several years.
Now, what about what people are spending their money on? Where are they putting it? A lot of people are spending it on fine arts or philanthropy. Where do you see most of this billionaires' fortune going?
Well, in China, it's like in the rest of the world. There's a lot of variety. So some people, of course, are being careful with their money, or maybe investing it in other companies. Some people are investing in American companies. You look at a guy like Wang Jianlin, who just bought AMC Theaters in the United States. But then you look at some of the more, sexy, flashy purchases. You've got one guy who just bought 2 diamond rings for a combined $77 million for his daughter. You've got another guy who just spent $170 million on the second highest priced piece of art ever sold anywhere. So people are using it in a whole variety of ways, some of which are much more interesting than others.
All right, and just lastly, as we look at the outlook, given the volatility and given the potential for this slowdown, is it going to be that there's going to be a time where the list is just going to get smaller and smaller?
No, I don't think so, because when you look at just in China or in the U.S. also, or globally, when people talk about slowdowns, they're talking about fewer people joining. They're not talking about the list actually shrinking. So this past year, the list went down slightly, but I think that was a little bit of a blip on the radar. If you look over time, the number of billionaires in the world keeps on growing and growing and growing. And one thing that you'll notice too is that the value of assets is appreciating at a higher rate than the value of wages. And so for the people who are owners of companies, for the people who actually might have a chance of making it onto this list, they might be less affected by a slowdown than normal folks like you or me.